You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, Doge, and more. Cryptocurrencies and digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity, provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments throughout the world's leading crypto derivatives markets. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amberdata. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amberdata delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amberdata eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of crypto derivatives. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. Time to dive into the world of crypto derivatives. What is rocking and rolling out there? Yes, it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. Did you miss us? We were off, of course, last week for the MLK holiday, but now back ready and raring to go. Remember, if you want to join the fun over there, only one place to go, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Get you not one, but two exclusive shows, live streams, awesome giveaways coming up on the giveaway for the January Pro Trading Crate. So get your name in the hat before the end of the month to get your name in for that fun and a whole bunch more. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro, the place to go to learn more as we learn who's joining us here on this still early in the year episode of the Crypto Rundown. Pleased to welcome back our old pal, Mr. Greg Magadini, the Director of Derivatives from Amberdata. Mr. Greg, welcome back to the Crypto Rundown for the first time in this mad year of 2025, sir.
Thank you, Mark. Always happy to be here. I'm very excited. Obviously, it's going to be a crazy year. It's already started to be a crazy year, so happy to dive into it.
It's going to be a crazy year indeed. Before we dive into all this madness that's popping off this year, really quickly, this is your first appearance in the new year, so let's start by looking back. When you look back on the madness of the crypto market that was 2024, what really stands out and resonates to you, sir?
Yeah, so last year, the beginning of the year, the big event, which was around exactly 12 months ago, was the approval of the spot ETF. So that came out of the gate with a Twitter sort of false approval hack thing. Then the SEC denied it. And then about a day later, we got the actual approval of the Bitcoin spot ETF. So that was big news. And then near the end of the year, we got options on that ETF, so IBIT ETFs. One of the most successful ETF launches ever, if not the most successful, with massive amounts of inflows throughout the year into the Bitcoin ETF. So those are kind of big notable events for sure. Then we had a bunch of different macro assumptions. We went from expecting a bunch of rate cuts to now ending the year, December FOMC, with hawkish guidance on a 25 basis rate cut, which really shifted a lot of the expectations on the monetary front. That quickly created some vol in the Bitcoin and crypto landscape, sold Bitcoin off, including equity space, which also sold off on that news. So that was kind of interesting. And then now we're in sort of the meme coin phase of crypto, and that's a new development. And so I think, with relaxing SEC rules and more of a meme coin adoption, we might see some very interesting things in 2025. MSTR pioneered the corporate treasury Bitcoin allocation and some of the things that Michael Saylor is doing to accumulate more Bitcoin. We might see similar types of things with new corporations, or we might have corporations launch their own meme coins, or who knows. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it's wild to think back that it was pretty much exactly a year ago that they approved the ETFs. It seemed like it's going to be smooth sailing from there. Who knew it would take the better part of the year to get the options approved, Greg? Then, of course, all the other madness that's gone on in between, as you just pointed out. A wild year last year in crypto. Listeners, when you think back on the wild year that was 2024, what really stands out and resonates to you? Hit us up, let us know as we keep on rolling into the Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down all the action in the world's leading digital asset. Yep, good old BTC, looking a wee bit bigger than it was on our last show 2 weeks ago. Remember, 2 weeks ago we had kind of just turned the corner from the 100K level and driven back down to about 91, a little bit shy of 92, actually, 91,955 on the show last week. When we kicked off the show this week, a little bit north of 99,000, 99,635, puts us up not quite 8,000 handles, about 7,680 handles over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, the bulls getting their bit in their teeth out there, which is good because we're not seeing a lot of bullish activity on the rest of the market out there today. So the bulls have at least somewhere to go out there today. But Mr. Greg, obviously a wild time out there in the markets today and indeed this week. What is catching your eye out there in the big dog, which is Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely wild week for sure. So one of the things that was really interesting was sort of the volatility pricing going into the inauguration last Monday. So if we look like right before the inauguration, vol was maybe around 60, depending on what maturity you're looking at. So if I'm looking at the 30-day maturity, it was probably about 60, and a little bit lower for the 90-day and a little higher for a 7-day, but call it 60. Then into the inauguration event, 30-day went from 60 to about 70. The weekly went from about 65 to 83. And then everything came back down rather quickly. One of the things that was really interesting, however, is that if I look at the realized vol against that inauguration event, it was priced, the implied price to realized vol pretty much on the dot. So it was a pretty efficient market. I kind of wonder if some of the IBIT flows are helping price that stuff more efficiently. And now, obviously, last week we had essentially as good of fundamental news as you could get. You had the Davos speech by Trump saying he wants the U.S. to be the crypto capital of the world and the AI capital of the world. That's pretty bullish for crypto. We have Gary Gensler, who stepped down, and Mark Ueda, who stepping in as the chairman until Paul Atkins gets confirmed. So that's a more bullish SEC, so to speak. You got Elon saying that he might wants to use blockchain technology to help track government spending. That's a perfect use case, in my opinion, and legitimizes a lot of the blockchain transparency for a sector that's typically less transparent. So that'll be really interesting, and that can open a door for corporations to do some similar things, stuff like that. Then we had a crypto task force being created. So all those things to say that we had all the bullish headlines in the world, and prices didn't really make the highs that we all hoped. It almost felt like everyone who wanted to buy had already bought, so to speak. And so we got a little bit of a pullback. Skews negative for sort of the weekly options, kind of flat for the 30-day stuff, and still positively skewed for the long-dated stuff on Bitcoin. So those are the things that are catching my eye. I think the main theme is, could we get any more bullish news? And if so, why didn't the crypto market rally? I think that's a big question.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. I do agree with you. I do think, using the blockchain to track spending makes sense. It's a perfect use case for it. I mean, it's not, you always hear that blockchain fails at these really high volume, high scale things like an exchange, for example. Wouldn't be good for that. But for government spending, it can handle that. So that's kind of an interesting use case. Speaking of use cases, let's see what's going on out here in the world of Bitcoin vol, shall we, listeners? Again, you can check this out for yourselves. If you haven't done so already, what are you waiting for? Amberdata.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. You have literally no excuse now. The GUI is completely free for you folks to access. You can kick the tires on all this stuff we're going to talk about here and a whole bunch more. So you literally have no excuse as we go check out the weekly vol out there. Listen, one of the things that's been kind of interesting, certainly to me, I know to a lot of our guests on the show, certainly for the last couple of months in the crypto world, listeners, and also in the big dog, which is Bitcoin, is just the fact that despite what we saw, Bitcoin breaking new highs, retreating from them, rallying to it again, vol didn't really seem to care. Vol seemed like it was kind of stuck in a rut around this mid to high 50s level for the better part of the last few months. And coming into the start of the show today, it seems like we're back in that rut again, listeners. Weekly vol, 56 last show, so 2 weeks ago now. 58 and a quarter today, so ticking up slightly there. Seeing kind of the opposite on the 30-day front, 57 and 3/4 on the show 2 weeks ago, 56 and a half today, so coming in about 1.25 there. And if we go out to the 6-month vol front, we were at an even 60 on the show last week, I should say 2 weeks ago, 59.1 today. So Greg, it's been a while since you joined us on the show, since, December 16th of last year, so it's been over a month. Are you as kind of intrigued as we are by the fact that no matter what Bitcoin seems to do these days, new highs, retreating from them, vol doesn't seem to care, Greg?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, the way that I think about it right now is that consolidation sort of makes sense. I think the market's got a lot to digest going forward. Like I said, we have all the bullish headlines in the world, and prices didn't make like huge new highs. So I really think there's a consolidation period. And today, if we look at vol, or at least on the realized space, like 30-day realized, I'm seeing 51. That's really kind of mid-level vol over the past 5 years. So if I look at realized vol from 2020 to 2025, 55 is within the interquartile. And I think the theme of structural lower vol makes sense, and essentially some sideways market action here. We might have like some intraday vol, but I think for the next couple months, I think we really got to digest this 100K level. What does this all mean? What does the new administration mean? What do the new policies mean? And so to me, and obviously the ETF and the ETF options, I wouldn't be surprised that we have to just do some work sideways here. And so in my mind, there's probably some good vol plays to be made here. Historically speaking, crypto vol is usually overpriced. Even just simple strategies like selling the straddle and delta hedging once a day and rolling the position once a week, that's a huge market outperformer type of strategy. So historically speaking, vol in crypto and Bitcoin specifically is overpriced. And so if you take all the bullish headlines and sort of the vol events of the past few months, hitting the 100K and a good reason for potential sideways consolidation, this seems like the base case scenario in my mind.
Let's look to the skew, see what's going on out there in Bitcoin, listeners. And last show 2 weeks ago, we were biased towards the dark side, the negative on the weekly side. Not surprising, we had drifted back down from that 100K level, nearly 10,000 handles. This week, that's gone. It's all pretty much completely flat, at least on the weekly skew. If we go out a little bit farther, we go out 30 days. It was almost a +1 on the show 2 weeks ago, about a +3/4, which again, to me, is mostly flat. Anything within a point is pretty much flat to me. This week, looking a little bit more optimistic, a little bit more bullish to the upside, a little bit north of 3, about 3.15 is where the 30-day skew is hanging out. We go farther out, of course, the hodlers are going to hodl, and go out 6 months, the skew was +3.75 on the show 2 weeks ago. This week, +5.5, so looking downright optimistic out there. Greg, anything catching your eye on the Bitcoin skew front this week, sir?
Yeah, well, I think really, if you're looking at the short-term skew, that's obviously always kind of following sort of like the trend of the week. So we've fallen back into the negative territory, so to speak. Long-term skew, consistently positively priced ever since sort of the SVB banking crisis and the FTX crisis. 2023, we had negative spot vol correlations and a negative skew in the long-term stuff. Now we consistently hold positive skew in the long-term stuff. To me, that makes it interesting, especially for those types of covered call strategies. If we get more people coming online in terms of institutional adoption in the IBIT options, I expect people to sort of sell that upside call skew. So I think there's definitely some structures to be done there. If you're bullish, you can just buy the underlying, generate some yield from those types of strategies. I think that's kind of an interesting, safe way to play that stuff.
Well, there's nothing safe about IBIT, listeners. This has been the name that's kind of taken the crypto and indeed the Bitcoin world by storm. Of course, the ETF approved a year ago, took a long time to get the options, but now they're making up for lost time. IBIT right now, listeners, 56.5, up about 4.25 from where it was 2 weeks ago. That ADV continues to just explode. 434,000 contracts a day. That's up 78,000. Greg, if I had told you a few months ago when the options were finally approved that few months later we'd be averaging nearly 500,000 contracts a day in IBIT, would you have called me a crazy person, sir, or is that kind of what you expected?
No, I think this is very interesting. I mean, if I look at the most traded equity options in the US, the top 10, IBIT is about 10th, right below Meta. MicroStrategy is maybe the 7th. And then obviously we got the big names like NVIDIA and Tesla. But the fact that crypto and crypto-related equities are all the way up there, it really shows us that the people who are maybe the Wall Street bets crowd or sort of the people who are really interested in this type of asset are using these options is amazing. So I think this is really sort of bullish for the space.
Yeah, paper for days out here. Have you slung IBIT yet, listeners? If not, you're rapidly becoming one of the last of the Mohegans. Seems like this thing is lighting up the tape. Right now, today, 342,000 contracts. So it seems like they're probably going to hit that number. Might be a little bit short of their ADV today. That's a lofty number to hit. The vol out there, 30-day vol, 57, up about a point from where it was on our last show. If you're wondering what the big dog is out there from an OI perspective, it is 53,000 of the March 68 calls. That's leading the dance out there in IBIT OI. That's pretty sizable. And if you're wondering what's going on out there today, the big dog are about 12,000 of the Jan end of month, so expiring on the 31st. So, yeah, end of month of Jan is already coming up. End of this week. That's wild. 12,000 of those going up today. 60.5 calls. Looks like they went up for prices around 35 cents. Worth noting, we have about the same number of the 63 half calls going up for a dime. So maybe somebody buying that vertical, listeners, for 25 cents. You like that, listeners? 60 half, 63 half, expiring at the end of this week. Remember, IBIT's 56.5. So if you're buying that bad boy, you need it to get the heck out of Dodge pretty quick. But nonetheless, a lot of activity to the upside. Definitely opening interesting on the 60 half. So it's not a roll, which is kind of intriguing as well. Let's keep on rolling out to another product that I know a lot of folks were wondering, once IBIT launched, is this going to be the death knell for this other product, the former darling in the Bitcoin option space, which is BITO. $24.15 when we kicked off the show, up nearly $2, about $1.90 from where it was 2 weeks ago. The ADV seems like it might have stabilized. It's 75,000 a day. It's actually up 2,000 from where it was 2 days ago. So maybe we found a little bit of a floor again. People were wondering for a while, is BITO going to go the way of the dodo now that IBIT has arrived on the scene? And at least so far, the answer is no, even though that ADV has come in quite a bit. Today, putting up about 54,000 contracts on the tape. So we'll see how that's working. By the way, obviously, our old pals, the Jan 30s, went the way of the dodo. Those are gone. Those were the dominant position in BITO options for quite some time. Looks like somebody likes that strike, though. And now the size position are the June 30s, 30,000 of those. So roughly the same size, the exact same strike. 6 months later, I have a feeling if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, listeners, good chance that it probably is a duck. I'm trying to go out here and see when these were open. Looks like they put on, some of these are positions are long. They started putting them on in July of 2023. Some of these have been on for a long time here on these Jan 30s. Interesting. Or excuse me, June 30s. Interesting. Maybe they also put on some in November of 2023. So some of this OI has been around for a while out here. Yeah, there's been about 25,000 open on these these June 30s since November of 2023. That's a long time for these 30s, but now taking the top spot. So kind of interesting out there. You think we can hit 30 by June expiration, listeners? Would you prefer to overwrite that? That could also be a way. I think some people were overwriting those Jan 30s last time. Greg, I know we've been kind of talking about BITO for a while. Some people were wondering if IBIT was the death knell. Seems like it's here to stay at least for a little bit longer. What's catching your eye in BITO, sir?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think one of the things you want to keep in mind is always just, I talk about this every episode, but is really that futures contango. So that's come down a lot. So BITO owns the CME futures. If I look at sort of the next month contract, which is the Feb 28th expiration, basis about 8.3% annualized, which is not that much more than risk-free rates. Call it risk-free, 5%, a little bit less than that, but give or take. So that's kind of interesting. And let's just remind listeners that in April of last year, when Bitcoin was making new all-time highs, basis hit nearly 30% annualized. So basis is pretty cheap right now, considering where we stand in terms of 100K Bitcoin. And so the BITO bleed in terms of basis, a little bit less. And then as you're trading those options, remember there's that dividend. So that's going to come out. Just hard to price these things unless you put all the variables in. So I do think in the long run, IBIT is just a more interesting product. It's more direct, but BITO is going to be around as long as BitX is around, and I think BitX is still a very interesting product, which is the 2 times BITO essentially. And so keep in mind of that contango and keep in mind those dividends.
Well, since you're on the show, Greg, we got to get to the product that is solely for degenerates, listeners. So if that's not you, you might want to cover your ears or skip ahead, or at the very least hide the children in the room, because we are talking about Greg's favorite product on the planet. Of course, MSTU. So if MSTR, if the monster, listeners, was not wild enough for you out there, allow me to present MSTU, the 2X long MSTR product. This is just a wild beast. A 914 when we kicked off the show, already up another 24 cents to 938 just since we started talking. So just a wild product by any stretch of the imagination. Putting up some numbers out there as well. The ADV is 79,000. Greg, I don't know, dare I say it, maybe this product is not just for degenerates anymore. Already almost 100,000 contracts on the tape today. 99,000. That's what BITO is putting up these days. So I don't know, maybe has MSTU graduated from strictly the land of degenerates, Greg?
I mean, it's definitely a pretty degenerate product for sure, but MSTR is very liquid. So MSTU, by association of the two times MSTR payout, remains, I guess people want to trade this thing. If I'm looking at sort of the top trades going on this today, so right now MSTR is probably about $9.40. The biggest trade we've seen today the most active contract we've seen today is the March $4 put. And so that had about 13,000 contracts traded. We see the VWAP IV of 184 and a VWAP price of 25 cents and max IV of 187 and min IV of 167. So based off the IV range, I think most of these participants are on the aggressing side, are aggressive buyers of the $4 puts. And so if we get any sort of pullback in crypto, MSTR probably has some room to run lower. It's obviously trading at a premium to its Bitcoin holdings, and therefore 2x MSTU, 50% drop in the asset price definitely is possible. That's not outside of the realm of possibilities between now and March.
Yeah, those definitely caught my eye as well, the 4 puts. Interesting. What's a 187 vol amongst friends, Greg? That's just wild numbers that they're throwing around out here. He's spending nearly a 200 vol, listeners, on puts that are 50% out of the money. And you might have a chance of those actually paying off. You like those, listeners? March 4 puts for about 25 cents. Somebody liked them to the tune of about 12,000 today. Again, that's nearly 200 vol, so be careful of your vol levels out here. But this is, I guess why I say this product, not for the faint of heart at all. But if you want a wild time, you can roll the dice on those 4 puts as we roll the dice right on into the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, let's get to the altcoin universe. One of the fun things about the show, there's many fun aspects of the show, listen. One of the fun things is just to look and see how market cap is evolving, especially that bottom half of the top 10. It's such a just blood sport down there. These names are just body-blowing each other left and right, trying to claw their way into the bottom half of the top 10. And, this rising Bitcoin tide did lift all boats again this week. 2 weeks ago on the show, cost you about $18.9 billion to break into the top 10. That got you to our old pal Tron. This week, Tron still holding down the number 10 spot, but now you're talking $20.8 billion. So almost a $2 billion increase in the floor just to break into the top 10. Again, that rising crypto tide lifting all boats at the end of the day, listeners. Number 9, we got our old pal Cardano, $31.75 billion. Number 8, it's Doge, Elon's favorite. Is it Greg's favorite? I guess we'll find out. $47.1 billion. Number 7, USD coin, $52.5 billion. Number 6, BNB coin, $94 billion worth of market cap. Number 5, it's Solana, 110, retreating from some of the recent lofty highs, 250, 260. It was rallying pretty hard, now back down a little bit, but still 110 worth of market cap. Number 4, it's Tether, $139 billion. Number 3, it's XRP, threatening a 3 handle, 291. Interesting, 167 out there. Number 2, it's ETH, because of course it is, 369. And the big dog, BTC, back below the 2T market cap level, but just barely, 1.97 trillion worth of market cap. But all eyes now turn to the number 2 in market cap. Number 1, and I know it used to be a lot of your hearts. Maybe some of you are turning to the dark side. Maybe you're kind of just tired of ETH. Maybe you think it's underperforming. Maybe you're looking farther afield, that maybe you think some greener pastures like Solana or some of the other names out there. Either way, this last couple of weeks worth of action, probably not going to do it for you. We were 3,010 on the show 2 weeks ago, a whopping 3,074 when we kicked off the show this week. Obviously, we did get a little higher in the interim, but still, that's not going to help defeat the narrative that ETH is underperforming. Greg, as we're kicking off this new year here, sir, what's kicking off your attention in the world of ETH?
Yeah, so I think obviously, as you mentioned, ETH's been underperforming for quite a while now. I think one of the things to keep in mind, though, is even though the Bitcoin price, the ETH price in Bitcoin terms, that trend is steadily, dropping. These types of charts sometimes get squeezes, and I could imagine a world where there's some sort of catalyst, such as, Doge government spending is going to be built on ETH, or some sort of investment allocation that ends up supporting ETH could quickly squeeze this chart higher. So I think there's that right tail risk in the realm of possibility. There's also the left tail risk where Solana has been essentially eating ETH's lunch in this sort of memeified world of smart contract L1s. And so if the market starts to pivot more towards Solana, we could also see a further breakdown in ETH. So in my mind, there's a bit of a sort of tail risk at the extremes in the ETH landscape. If I look at the realized vol space, I actually just wrote about this over the weekend. I think one of the things that is really interesting is that if I look at the past 5 years of realized vol, right now the ETH realized vol for say 90 days is a little shy of 70. But if I look at the past 5 years, the upper 75th percentile is around 100. So there's about 30 vol points available to ETH just to get to the upper 75th percentile. And if we get some sort of right tail, left tail risk, over the past 5 years, we've seen 90-day vol and 30-day vol between 200 and 250 on the realized side. So I wouldn't completely discount the potential for something crazy to happen in ETH, even though ETH has been lackluster as of late. Obviously, we have the L2 transactions being done off-chain, which nullifies the EIP 1559 inflation mitigation from transaction fees creating ETH burns. And then we've had the ETH Foundation internal fighting, the kind of directionless leadership from the Ethereum Foundation, people asking Vitalik to step down and instead of him being the leader, hiring a board, things like that. And so things might be at their worst for ETH, so to speak. And so that underperformance might actually at some point turn around or get much worse. So I think there's a good argument to be made that if my thesis is that Bitcoin vol is going to go sideways for a little while and there might be a good selling the Bitcoin vol period, I do think the rightmost tails or the leftmost tail on ETH, call it the 5 delta range, could actually be kind of interesting. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it as a long, 5 delta as a long.
5 delta range for ETH. Yeah, the news not exactly looking good for all the ETH bulls out there. That said, we did have some bright moments in the sun not too long ago. ETH hit about 3,700, pretty close to it, back in the first week of the year. So it can rally back north to that 4K level or pretty darn close to it. And obviously we hit 4K again about a month or so after the election. So we can get up to those lofty, dizzying heights again, listeners. It just doesn't seem like ETH can kind of get out of its own way right now, just hanging out around the 3,000 level for the better part of the last few weeks. Vol-wise, what we're seeing out there is pretty much what you'd expect with a kind of lingering underlying here as the vol slowly coming in. 7-day vol, 77 and a quarter. 2 weeks ago out here, and this week, 68 and a half. So vol coming in pretty aggressively on the weekly front. If you go out to a more standardized vol metric, 30 days, the vol 2 weeks ago, 71.30. This week, 66, so coming in over 5 points there. And the 6-month vol, even the hodlers, vol coming in a little bit there as well. 70 even on the show 2 weeks ago, 68 and a half today. And then going out to the skew front, are we seeing a lot of optimism or anything really? Is it bearish sentiment? What are we seeing out there from an ETH skew front? And the last show, we were on the bearish side, -3.25, coming in this week on the weekly skew front. Still bearish, but looking a little bit less so, -1.5. Going out a full month, listeners, almost a +2 to the upside. Last show, about 1.85. This week, 2.75. So maybe some folks out there looking for a little bit of a near-term turnaround here in ETH. We'll see. I mean, 2.75, hard to get too excited about that. You're not talking extreme bullish sentiment, but I think the ETH bulls will take what they can get. Going out 6 months, we were at a +5.85 on the show 2 weeks ago. This week, about 6.25. Greg, you just broke down all those interesting developments on the underlying side for ETH. What's catching your eye from a vol and skew perspective, sir?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we do, and all your listeners can come check this out. It's free on the app, pro.amberdata.io. Pro.amberdata.io. is you can actually look at the risk neutral cumulative distribution that's being priced by the options market. So if I look at that for ETH, say, what's the probability of getting above 5,000, which is give or take the all-time high. By the end of the year, we see a 24% probability greater than 5,000, a 20% for the end of September, and then about a 12% for the end of June. And so, from now until June, I think there's a huge window of potential, news events to happen. So let's call it the 6-month option. And if I translate that into sort of the skew space and look at that historically, right now, the 6-month options are, call it, 5 vol points skewed to the call side. But in these bullish environments, we've seen them as high as like 40 vol points skewed to the upside, crazy things like that. And we've never really seen it much below, call it 10 points skewed to the put side. So I would say that the 6-month skew is kind of mid-level. It's not cheap, but it's definitely not expensive. And so if you have this thesis of maybe something gets announced here in the next 6 months and 12% probability of being above all-time highs, I don't think that's that crazy in the sense that things are unpredictable right now. So in my mind, something like a delta neutral, but owning the optionality to the upside. So buying the call and shorting ETH, something like that on a delta neutral basis could be kind of interesting. I think vol overall for ETH right now is kind of interesting. I think something's going to happen. Like it's going to pick a direction. Either Solana starts to eat ETH's lunch or ETH has to start making a comeback.
Yeah, kind of wild moves just over this past weekend. You went into the weekend 3,400 in ETH. Seems like all was right with the world again with ETH, and we kind of fell off a cliff over the last 24 hours, plunging right back down to about 3,000, bouncing off of it in the wee hours of the morning today before rallying today. If you're looking for some bullish news, maybe Greg and I talking about ETH is turning it around, listeners, because now it's back up over 3,100, about 3,117. So, Greg, we just have to keep talking about it for hours here on the show, and we'll slowly lift ETH back to 4,000. What do you say?
I love it. That's great.
All right, listeners, let's run through some more of the altcoin universe. Then we'll get some of Greg's fun picks, and then we'll get some of your questions in here for this week. Let's go out to, as Greg was just talking about, the off-sided ETH alternative / competitor. It is Solana, just roaring back to life from where it was even a few weeks ago. We were sub 200, 176 on the show just a few weeks ago. So quite the run. I was at 227 when we kicked off the show today. In the interim, it got even higher, as I was saying. Solana rampaging up to I saw it up at 260, if not north of that there. So it was quite the run on Solana. Even still, 227 and a half when we kicked off the show today. That's up 51 handles from where we were this time 2 weeks ago. So Solana bulls can't be too angry at that out there, and unless maybe you're angry you didn't scoop some at those lower levels out there. But yeah, it has been a rollicking start to the year, selling off. It's like we hit about 170 a few weeks ago, and that was kind of the near-term nadir. Then rallied hard off that. Listen, is 261 about eight or so days ago. Yeah, just wild times out there in Solana. Still in 51 handles over a couple of weeks. Can't complain about that. Greg, I know you've been keeping an eye on Solana. Everybody has. It's kind of hard not to, right? It's inescapable out there. What's catching your eye in the world of Solana these days?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that's interesting about Solana and Solana options especially is even if you're looking at the vol of vol is very high. So even if I look at call it the past year of at the money vol for 14 days till expiration, 21 days till expiration, I mean, we were as high as 137, then down to call it 90, then right back up to 130, then down to 65, then right back up to 115, then down to 65, then right back up to 90. Then in the past week we hit 140, and now we're back down to 105. So the vol of vol is pretty interesting in Solana. I think owning tails in Solana is another sort of interesting trade, just kind of like the ETH trade. even potentially more so, depending on where vol is in Solana. Obviously, buying 140 vol is never that fun, but if you can get sort of that 90 vol handle, that can be pretty interesting. And I think we're going to get more surprises in the cards for Solana. Obviously, we have a lot of memes, presidential meme coins and other meme coins on the Solana blockchain. That's pretty interesting. We had, some huge trading volumes on Solana dexes. We've had Solana stablecoin issuance double from 5 billion to 10 billion in a past week or a couple weeks. All that stuff is very good developments for Solana. The options market is not as liquid, of course, and we'll see if we get those Solana ETFs and hopefully ETF options soon. That would be great. But I think Solana is going to be full of surprises for us.
Yeah, Solana ETF certainly would be very interesting for an underlying that was just, $9 not that long ago. Now we have ETFs potentially on them, options. You're right. I would love to see a little bit more liquidity in this Solana options. Folks are obviously interested in it, and certainly an underlying around 250, 225, 260, anything north of 200 certainly merits some interest from an options perspective, but very fascinating stuff. XRP also looking a little fascinating again. It's seeming like it was going to stay stuck around that 2.5 level. That was the new 50-cent level that it was stuck at for years. It was at 2.5 on the show 2 weeks ago. 292 coming in the start of the show today, up about 45 cents. So maybe XRP finally coming back to life. Greg's favorite, Doge, 32.4 cents 2 weeks ago, a whopping 32.2 cents today. So not a hell of a lot going on the Doge front. Litecoin, 95, pretty much even 2 weeks ago. 111, pretty much even coming into start of the show today. It's up about exactly 16 handles. So nice little pop for Litecoin. Cardano, 91 cents 2 weeks ago, 90.6. So not a hell of a lot of action there. Polkadot actually giving up the ghost. 618 2 weeks ago, 577 this week, down about 41 cents. And Greg's favorite, Shiba Inu, a million zeros, 2-0 on the show 2 weeks ago. This week, a million zeros, 1-8. So unfortunately, no Shiba Lambos for you. Greg, we got some questions I want to get to. Before we get there, I know you always come with a couple of altcoin in your back pocket. Any in particular you're keeping an eye on this week, sir?
Yeah, well, we had a launch. So DRV, Derive, launched their token. They are the DeFi options platform on January 15th, which was also my birthday, which was very cool, interesting event. So that's something I just follow. I definitely like that project a lot. I think they have a pretty fancy DeFi exchange for options and perps. So that's definitely something I like to look at. There's obviously other big ones such as Hyperliquid that people have gravitated towards, and they're the number one DEX for perps, but not options. So that's kind of interesting in terms of our favorite coin, Dogecoin. I think Dogecoin is pretty interesting in the sense that it's really going to be a coin that either does nothing or gaps up very hard. So it's almost like a idle price tag until something may or may not happen, and then that thing will just be worth $2. That's kind of how I think about it. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's just like the price path in my mind is either Elon does something with it, and if he doesn't, no one's going to care about it. So that's kind of how I view that coin. So yeah, those are the two that I'm looking at in the altcoin space.
That Derive had a wild 24 hours when it kicked off, huh? Looking at the chart right now, launched, looks like around 33 cents. Listeners, back on the 14th, 15th, got as high as 45 cents, and then kind of fell out of bed down to about 18 cents. And it's been kind of struggling ever since, Greg, down to about 9 cents out there. So I guess the flip side of that is if you want a bargain, you didn't like it at 45 cents, Greg, you got to love it at 9, right?
Yeah, and token aside, forget about investing in the token. I just like the project in terms of, I think they have a really interesting exchange.
Yeah, I'll have to dig into this one a little bit myself. Always fun to have some interesting altcoins, especially exactly what you're talking about. What their token is for is kind of interesting. Speaking of things that are interesting, your questions are always interesting. Let's get to some of those now. A little bit of your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, we've got some hot questions of the week that you folks are getting all hot and bothered about. I want to get Greg's thoughts on those in a second, but he's been waiting patiently all show. Let's get out to this question from our pro chat from a listener, Malasesia. It's like a new name, so if that's the case, welcome to Malasesia. Welcome to all the new folks who've been joining us here in the beginning of the year. He wants to know, what are our thoughts on AERO, ticker AERO? This is Aerodrome Finance. I'm assuming you mean that and not the 4-cent Canadian. I think it's a mining stocks. I think we're going to go for the old Aerodrome Finance at about 92 cents. Looks like today kind of had an interesting year out here as well. You know, a year ago, February of a year ago, about 8 cents. So it's had quite the run. Of course, it's had a few fits and starts along the way, listeners, if you're not familiar with it. They rallied it hard back in April of last year to a little over $2, $2.02 on April 14th. Then it kind of came crashing back to earth July 4th, back to about 42 cents. Kind of languished there for a while, and then kicked up another leg up starting around September 6th, 50 cents. Kept rallying all the way, obviously got caught up in the crypto boom at the end of the year. And right around the time that I said ETH topped out around 4,000, so right around early mid-December, we had AERO topping out, it looks like around $2.20. So quite the run. Since then, it's retreated, cut more than in half back to about 93 cents again. So hanging out kind of in the midpoint of this chart over the better part of the last year. Obviously quite the range, though, about a dime to the downside and about $2.20 to the upside. An interesting one, Aerodrome Finance, again, not one that we follow too much. Looks like it's a next-gen automated market maker designed to serve as Base's central liquidity hub. Interesting. So it has a powerful liquidity incentive engine. That's kind of getting to the heart of what we like to talk about here on the show. We always love so many of these automated market makers here in the crypto space, and it sounds like AERO is one of these. Interesting. Greg, are you a fan of AERO? Is this one you've watched at all, sir?
So I haven't looked at the token, but again, I think the project is pretty good. So in the sense that I've used the exchange, I thought it was like a really nice user interface. Obviously, everything on Base transacts very cheap and is very quick. And they list a bunch of various tokens. So it's a good protocol. I haven't looked at the tokenomics or the token side of it at all. But I do think Base chain protocols having the support of Coinbase, essentially, at least the chain does. That's always kind of interesting. It's definitely something worth, that merits some more investigation.
Yeah, I like these tokens that aim to enhance liquidity out there. Always a good thing at the end of the day. And yeah, these AMMs, some might say they're a dime a dozen in the crypto space, but some obviously distinguish themselves from the pack. Seems like AERO might be doing that. That's a good suggestion. Who was that? Malasesia. I'm going to put this on my watch list. I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into it. Sounds like Greg is as well. Maybe we'll come back to it on a future show. The good news is if you did like it at $2.20, it's 93 cents right now. Obviously, it's much higher than it was at about a dime a year ago as well. So maybe tread carefully there. If you want some, maybe start averaging in slowly. I wouldn't go whole hog, but at least it's not $2.20 again. So kind of interesting stuff. Again, with these tokens, the devil is in the details. I need to dive in, but kind of an interesting one. Might have to put that on our radar. Good suggestion there, Mr. or Mrs. Malasesia. I like the name, Malasesia. All right, so let's keep rolling here. Greg, we got some hot questions of the week that are tearing up and dividing our audience right now. I'll get you out of here giving your thoughts on these. Not all entirely crypto related, but very much near and dear to what's going on right now of the moment. We have a two-parter this week, Greg. It's all about what's lighting up the tape right now in the broad equity space, which is, of course, all this kerfuffle over DeepSeek. We're asking our audience, is DeepSeek the canary in the coal mine for the end of the AI boom? Quite simply, will SPX close positive on the year? And then we follow that up during the show, actually, right now, with kind of a second part, an addendum to that, which is, do you think NVIDIA will close positive on the year? Obviously, a lot of the crosshairs right now for this DeepSeek sell-off fixed squarely on NVIDIA. Greg, have you been watching all this madness unfolding today? And what are your thoughts on what it portends for the broad equity space and indeed NVIDIA in particular, sir?
Yeah, I mean, talk about a big 17% move in NVIDIA. That's really interesting. I mean, that's one of the highest vol. I think it is the highest realized vol that NVIDIA has seen in the past 5 years. I haven't checked the whole history, but looking here at the past 5 years, if I do daily vol of that, it's like a daily vol of something like 250% annualized, something crazy like that. So that's pretty interesting in terms of opportunity. I think, obviously everyone's been dying to get a piece of NVIDIA. I mean, who can tell the future for sure, but there's probably going to be some people who are going to view this as an opportunity to finally be able to get in. I think that the theme today is really, well, if the Chinese can make AI with DeepSeek without needing as much GPUs, then we have to adjust our forecasts for GPU demand. Therefore, if we adjust for forecasts for GPU demand, our discounted cash flows extrapolated out, 10, 20, 30 years, if we move that down 10% on the demand side, that actually decreases the valuation of NVIDIA drastically from a compounded effect. But I think it's still a little bit early to say how all this stuff goes. I'm not an AI expert by any means, but just judging by the markets, usually when there's kind of like a big surprise event like this, it can definitely overshoot and create an entry point for people who have a little bit more of a long-term window. Not saying that's going to be the case, but that's kind of the theme that I have in the back of my mind here.
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff. We were debating it earlier on the option block. Our audience is debating it right now. Right now, they're saying over half of you, 58.3% of you are saying the S&P will not close positive on the year. That could be DeepSeek related, could be other things going on as well. But right now, only 58.3% of you say no. Only 25% say yes, the S&P will close higher on the year. 12.5% say you don't care, you're trading vol all day anyway. And a little over 4% saying you don't care, you're trading crypto all day. Like maybe AERO and some of the other new tickers we're talking about here, listeners. So intriguing stuff. You follow that up actually with a more targeted question. Quite simply, do you think NVIDIA is going to close positive on the year on the heels of all this news? And maybe getting along the lines of what Greg was saying, 73.9% of our audience right now saying heck yes, only 26.1% saying no. So interesting. Maybe you think NVIDIA is going to shrug off this latest attack at it. Intriguing stuff. We'll get out of here on this one, Greg. A year ago, we asked our audience, because you said it was pretty much the 1 year anniversary of the launch of the Bitcoin ETFs. We asked our audience a year ago, now that the spot Bitcoins are finally approved, do you think Bitcoin will close positive on the year? It was time for our annual sentiment poll, kind of like we're doing now in the S&P. And our audience, Greg, as usual, very precise, very accurate. 56.7% said heck yes. Obviously, that was the right answer in hindsight, Greg. A wild year in crypto. What are your thoughts on our audience being pretty prescient? And obviously, they're buyers of NVIDIA here, Greg. So maybe I think this is an opportunity kind of like you do, Greg. And if folks want to check out what you got cooking on the Amberdata side, maybe kick the tires on your GUI for themselves. Where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the GUI website is pro.amberdata.io. You can make a free account and have full access with just your email and email verification. So very exciting stuff there. If you want to get some of our weekly insights, you can go to amberDataDerivatives.substack.com. And then you can check out our YouTube channel on everything related to trading, as well as interviews with crypto vol traders. Just type in Amber Data Derivatives or GVOL in the search bar.
There you go. Check them out. Kick the tires and light the fires. Try your hand at that GUI. A lot of great stuff. We really only have a chance to scratch the surface. The show could be 6 hours, and we would still only scratch the surface of it. Check it out. AmberData.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. That is going to do it for us on the network today. back again with our usual array of content throughout the week, including, of course, our doubleheader on Wednesday of the Futures Rundown and Options Bootcamp. Futures Rundown does have a lot of crypto overlap there, so make sure if you're listening to this show, you check that out. Thursday, of course, another show that gets into the crypto realm with our This Week in Futures Options with our friend over there at CME, as well as the Option Block. Our buddy, the Flow Master, will be back, so it should be fun breaking down some unusual activity with him. Friday, of course, back again exclusively for the pro with Options Oddities, coming hot on the heels of Volatility Views. Then we're back again next Monday, another episode of the Crypto Rundown. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amberdata. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amberdata delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amberdata eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.